Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Frank and Patsy podcast. Um, I'm your co-host, Patsy Zarella. Your other co-host, Frank Natel, will be with us anytime now. I started a couple minutes early, um, for really no reason in particular. Just thought it'd be a good idea to get busy a little earlier. One of the things we're going to talk about today is we're going to be talking about this virus and how this lockdown is affecting us and the things that we're doing in order to cope with uh, with this, because it's getting to a point where everybody's getting very antsy, and everybody's really starting to uh, I believe the term is jungle fever, cabin fever, right? Um, so I wanted to take what I thought would be a pretty good episode today and have Frank whenever he gets on, and hopefully anybody else in the clique that gets on, and decide that this is how we're handling things. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're gonna cope with things. Now this is going to be what we consider to be our new normal. Uh, how do you handle it? I guess that's a big question too. How are you handling this? What are you doing? How what have you done or changed in order to do this, right? To get through this. Has your family time changed? Are you doing things to improve yourself that you wouldn't normally have time to do? Are you learning a new programming language? Are you learning an instrument? Are you even something as simple as uh, even as something as simple just finishing a game that maybe you've played. Um, Something like that. How are you doing it? How are you coping with it? What are some of the things that you're doing? It's funny that we have this incredible dilemma ahead of us, and this problem that we will always remember, right? It's going to be a staple in in human history, in our history, and how we cope with it and how we change. How are we going to change things? How are we going to how are we going to handle these things? Very important questions, very important things that we need to talk about. uh just got a message from Frank. He's on his way in, so hopefully he can jump in. He's really good at this stuff, so we'll see what he has to say, and then him and I will get into a conversation. But I wanted to hear it from you. Yeah, I want to hear from you. How are you handling this? What are you doing, if anything, right? If you're not, then you know you got to be going crazy. You have to be. So let me see if I can get him on here. There we go. Let's see what we can do with that. Let's see if that gets him in here. We'll see what that does. We're still new at this, folks, so just give us a minute. We'll see what we can do. Um, One of the things that's been going around is this idea of testing. Like, how much testing do we have? Do we not have enough testing? Do we uh, are we doing enough? You know, are we doing enough to handle this? My answer has always been no, we're not. You know, as long as you have people who are still sick, who are still fighting this, who are still coming down with this, as long as we have people who are not uh, capable of finding out if they're infected or not, no, we're not doing nearly enough. And it's scary that we had all of this time to get better prepared. I mean, would we have been completely prepared? Would we have been able to kick this thing in the ass? No, probably not. But I think we'd have been far better prepared. I think we would have been in a far better place and far better equipped to handle this if we'd have had proper leadership in addressing and tackling this. That was a huge problem and a huge mistake, and it was something that was never corrected. And it looks like Frank is on his way in, so we'll get started here officially here in a second. Hey, Frank.
Hey, Patsy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Sorry, I thought we did audio only on Wednesday.
No. We remember we decided we were going to do everything video, and then we were just going to upload the audio to the
okay.
pod
Gotcha.
later.
Gotcha.
How's everybody? How's your mom? How's
A
everybody?
little change today. A little change in the sense that after the doctor reviewed the X-rays, wanted to schedule surgery. So that's going to take place tomorrow. They had to have her in today for the pre-workup and everything like that. So broken in 4 places. The ball's way where it doesn't need to be. So and the bone itself is broken in 4 places. So plates and screws are in order. Not as good a news as we had yesterday. So
Well, it's more informed now, that's for sure.
yeah.
Well, obviously, you know, not to use a cliche, but thoughts and prayers. I'll be praying for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, we appreciate it for sure. So, what's going on? What have you been covering?
Well, I wanted to talk about a little bit today about how we're coping with this and how we're handling it. We can get into the current events and everything, you know, later on. But I wanted to just kind of throw a little bit back and forth about how are we handling this thing? How has your life changed? What are you doing differently now than you may have done previously? You know, and do you think that what of those things that you're doing now do you think you will continue once this once we get past this and we go back to whatever our new normal is going to be?
Well, I mean, definitely a lot more family time, which has been great, and spending time with family, quality time with family. Being the part-time teacher, everybody's that's got school-age kids now are involved with their schoolwork. Dante just got done with spring break, which was nice. They had that sense of normalcy that, even though they had done about 3 weeks of homeschooling, and you're at home every day, they still said, you're not going to do any more schoolwork for the next 7 or 8 school days. You're going to take your spring break. So that was nice. But I'm serving, my wife and I are serving as teachers, of course, or teachers' aides or whatever you want to call it, doing the schoolwork. We're doing a lot of, I used to be a big time gardener at home with vegetables and fruits before I moved to Baltimore. And I let my garden basically go when I went down there. So we've been out in the garden pulling up all the old weeds and getting ready to turn it over. We've got our geranium in the window, and I'll show you that real quick. So that's a lot of fun. We got all our plants started, and we'll have a lot of good tomatoes and zucchini and beans and peas and all the good stuff that we all love to pull out of the garden and put on the plate. So I think just taking care of things around the house, taking care of family stuff. I'd like to think that the priorities that you see at home will stay kind of as one instead of 1A. Work was always kind of one because you'd go to work every day, and that seemed like it was the priority. in our house, I don't want to proselytize, but we always, every day we sit down for a meal or every night we go to bed, we pray as a family. So God's number one, but for us, but you know, as far as the daily activities, work was one and family was 1A. Maybe that's that's definitely reversed. Um, and I'd like to think that stays that way for us.
We have started to do things now that I never would have. I shouldn't say that because it sounds like it's something foreign, but I wouldn't have thought that we probably would have gone back to. Okay, whenever our son was young, whenever he was small, we always had supper together, right? We always had time for it. And you're right, it was like work was always, it was important, but what we did at home, especially in the kitchen, uh, and at the table, was far more important than everything else. And as he's gotten older and started to go out on his own, um, those things kind of went away, and now we grab something to eat here and there, with the programs that my wife has at the jail. Sometimes she's not home until after my class is over, which is 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night. By that time, we're just grabbing something and going to bed. You talk to each other for 10 or 15 minutes, and you know, "Oh, did anything exciting happen today? Oh yeah, this and this happened. Oh, it's really nice. Yeah, and this happened. Oh, okay, good. Oh, good night. I'll see you tomorrow. That type of thing.
Right.
Uh, we're now spending a lot more time actually planning meals and doing things like that. One of the things I did today, and I didn't save it for today. I actually wanted to do it yesterday, but I lost track of time. Was I messaged my brother, and he hasn't gone back to me. I did it this morning, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about us getting together for supper over the weekend?" What I mean by getting together, this is my text, right? So it's really long, right? This thing should have been published. It was long enough. I said, what I mean by that is we're gonna sit down for the meal, and we're gonna FaceTime each other. So you'll be at your table with your meal, right? We'll be at ours with our meal. Maybe we'll get mom and dad involved, and we will sit around as like a virtual table, right?
Yeah.
And we'll have dinner that way. We'll have supper that way. He didn't get back to me yet. Normally, it takes him a day to figure out how to use his phone or something. I don't know, but I find myself doing things more along those lines, right? Whereas
Yeah.
is before, if I didn't do anything or talk to him for a while, it wouldn't have bothered me. No news is good news, that type thing. So
Yeah.
hopefully things like that carry and stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was nice to see him over at your house that day. We hung out for the El Clasico. Hard to believe that that wasn't that long ago, but it seems like forever ago at this point. Um, been playing a little bit of FIFA with the EA Sports gaming. Doing some Zoom meetings with my soccer team, a couple soccer teams I help coach or coach. That's been fun. It leaves something to be desired. There's great times where we see smiles on the kids' faces and things are going well, and then there's other times where your plans for the practice, and I think we were talking about this last night. I think you can relate to this. Plans for the practice are great on paper. You walk outside and you set up your cones and you think it's going to go just as you planned it, and it's like, I can't see what you're doing. It's not their fault. What are you doing? The screen goes to them, and I don't want to mute them all because I want to have interaction with them. So they can't see what you're doing, so we do try to mute occasionally so that they can watch the display of what we're doing on the ground. But it's we're learning. I'm learning how to try to do this virtually, and it's it's a learning curve for me, I'll say that.
Yeah, you know what? It's a learning curve for me too. I mean, I've been teaching. I teach at the local community college. I've had my school for how long? And so you think that you're used to, you've coached for how long? You think that you're used to being in front of people and talking to them and explaining and doing whatever. But whenever it's just you in front of a camera, right? It's so different. It feels very, very foreign to me. I feel like I'm just like on an island someplace, and it's like I'm trying to talk, I'm trying to explain, but you don't get, and I think it's because you don't get any feedback, you know. I mean, you kind of do, but whenever you're face to face with people, you're getting this feedback immediately, right? You can see in their eyes as you're talking, as you're, if they're getting it, if they're understanding, if they're enjoying it, if they're not. Whenever you're just in front of the camera, maybe you have a monitor or something going where you can see everybody that you're talking to, it still feels like it's really, really separated. You know, you don't get that instant feedback, that instant communication that you're used to. It feels very, very foreign to me.
It is. It's so different, and but yet we're trying to find ways to stay connected to our people. You know, we your work as a teacher and as a martial artist is not about social distancing. It's about
No,
social
it is not.
social gathering. You know, it's about social gathering and working together as a dojo and as a team. And same thing with soccer. You know, we get these kids together, their parents come and watch them play, and you know that's a big piece that's missing. But the technology is helping. It's giving them a chance to stay active. It's giving them a chance to stay together in a sense. There is something missing, but at least when we sit and talk with each other, um, you can see they light up when they get to see their friends and
Mhm.
they get to talk about what they're doing today, what they're going to do tonight with their families. So I think your idea about sitting around a table with your family is a good one. You know, it's not the same as if you were passing the bread across to each other, but it's as good as we can do right now, and it's pretty darn good. You know, something we wouldn't have had 20 years ago, that's for sure.
Yeah,
If this is
that is the one advantage I think that we have, that, you know, if this would have happened 20 years ago, uh, I think people would have taken it a lot harder, or it'd have been a lot harder on people. Not that it's not hard now, but it just would have been worse 20 years ago than it is now.
Yeah, for sure. Let me show you something, and I know you'll recognize this, but maybe some of our viewers won't. Uh,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
One of our favorite things to come home. You know, when your grandparents used to have these things sitting in a basket, or you know, around Easter time, they'd seem to have little candies like this, the bocce and these ones sitting around, and it was always nice to open those up. The Italian candies that you just don't see that much anymore.
No, no, you don't. Whenever we were kids, my grandparents actually used to get them from Italy, right?
Mhm.
Now you can actually get. I don't know if you got those at Mangina. You can get them at Mangina's.
Exactly where we got
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Uh, but at the whenever we were kids, yeah, you're right. Those things were a treat, and it was Easter. You always saw them at Easter time,
Yep.
and if you were lucky, either Grandpa got either Ted got a little a little tipsy, or they did it on purpose, and you made him gotten to might have been a couple hanging around at Christmas time, right? But that
Yeah.
was it. That was the only time you ever saw those. Oh,
Pretty
those
much.
bring back so many memories.
Yep. I thought they would. I wanted to share that. It reminds me, just spontaneously, it reminded me also, we used to, my grandparents used to live down Mahoning Town before they passed away. Uh, they lived on Wabash Avenue.
Mhm.
And at the corner of Wabash, and I want to say, I think it was Ashland, I'm not 100% sure. But there was just a one little street that dead ended into the train tracks right there at the corner of Wabash where they lived. On that street, there was a guy by the name of Vito Colella. And Vito had a little tiny store that was all Italian specialty stuff. And they lived, yeah, I mean, I could walk to my grandparents' backyard to his backyard and then pop out
Oh,
in the front to his little store. That was like heaven, man. You'd walk in there and everything was from Italy. He would import it, and uh, it was fantastic. He would open up, like, you know, if he'd see me coming from my grandparents' back porch, he'd open the store up for me. And it was, it's just one of those memories from childhood that just, you know, you don't see that anymore. You just don't see those kind of things anymore.
oh, that's too bad. Oh, Frank, I wanted to a real quick shout out to Acting Osprey 323, who's now following us. Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Uh,
the
we,
follow.
we we appreciate the follow. Uh, I want to. Suppose since you showed me something, I want to show you something. Okay. Um, as soon as I find it, hold on, hold on. I'll get this eventually, Frank. Don't worry. Eventually, I'm going to get really good at this. then like we're really in trouble. Let's see here. Share screen. Here we go. Uh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first read that, I was like, "You're kidding." Then I had to read it again. All right.
Yeah.
Few Americans
Right.
support that. I'll be honest. That was not the headline I was expecting today. I'm not. I'm not complaining about it by any means. Right. But that wasn't the headline that I was looking for or what I was expecting. Whenever I saw a headline like that, the first thing I thought of was where, well, people are tired of this shit. They're ready to get out. But uh, the survey taken from the AP, I have no idea what NORC means, but it's this NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. Uh, here you go, right here, right. Uh, Only 12% of Americans say the measures where they live go too far. About twice as many, 26%, believe the limits don't go far enough. Believe it or not, I live with somebody who is in that 26%. And the majority of us, 61%, feel the government has taken the proper steps. Those numbers surprise you by any chance?
Um, it's hard to kind of unring the bell at this point now that you read them to me. I would say uh they, honestly, they surprise me that it's as high as it is, that 26% of the people are saying that the measures haven't been taken far enough. Because the reason I say that is, I think it's such a drastic change to us. It's a shock to our system that that's one that's hard for me to kind of fathom, that there's a quarter of the people out there thinking we should be even stricter than what we are right now. I'm not saying that they're wrong in that belief, because I get that. I wouldn't mind, having had a very strict lockdown early on. We've talked about this, like, you know, just say everything's closed, with the exception of some grocery stores and we talked about having like a rolling time frame to have people go out and get their groceries, and try to do it in a way that keeps people limited. So I get that, but I'm just surprised the number is that high, 26%. On the other hand, the 12%, I mean, there's just those people out there, 10 to 12, 10 to 15%, that just always think any kind of government infringement on, our ability to kind of determine what's best for ourselves. That one doesn't surprise me as much. I don't think they're right by any stretch, but I think that I get that there's 10 to 12% of those people out there. So yeah, that's kind of my feeling on it at first blush.
Yeah, the 10 to 12% doesn't surprise me. If you do the math right now, uh, our company laid off about as many people as they could, right? And so we have about 12 to 14 people on our floor on our shop, and I got one guy who gives me a hard time every day. Right,
When you're
about
taking the temperature.
when I'm taking temperature, whenever I'm monitoring, make sure everybody got their masks on. That is going against the civil liberties, right? So if you do the math, you're looking at 10%.
Yeah.
So it gives me a little bit of faith in that poll, anyhow, right? That the numbers seem pretty accurate. I agreed with you that 26% saying that we don't go far enough. That really surprised me. That stuck out more so for me than just about anything else,
Mm-hmm.
right? I really thought that number would have been probably around the same 10 to 12 to 14%. That would have been the other side of the spectrum, and everybody else kind of would have been in the
Yeah.
60, 70%
Mm-hmm.
in the middle. So that was, and believe it or not, I like it. It makes me feel better knowing that most of the people, if you take the two who say we've gone just about right, and the people say we haven't gone far enough, most of the people are taking this very seriously, and they're
Yep.
not being the jackasses that is catching a lot of the news coverage, right? Where they're going to the state capitol with their guns because they want to shoot a virus, or God knows what the fuck they're doing. Um, it really kind of reinforces just how small of a minority of people these knuckleheads are.
Yeah, they are, and thankfully that's the case. But they get a lot of attention, and let's face it, people that you know, one person or two people that go shoot up a school of 350 people or 650 people, the one or two that did the shooting get the attention.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that their names are, memorialized. They get all the coverage about what went wrong with those kids or those people that did the shooting. Um, very little, very little coverage about the people that got shot or their families. Um, so it's not surprising that the kind of the fringe element is the ones that are getting the coverage here. But I hope that the governing people, the people that are governing our country, and it seems like most of them do get it, that this kind of ballyhoo that's raised around the folks that are making this protest noise isn't going to stop them from doing the right thing.
Right.
I've seen, recently I've seen. We asked the question hypothetically last week: will we ever see protests in a state where there's a Republican governor? And yesterday that happened in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio. And Mike DeWine is a Republican governor. And look, I mean, I don't agree with all his policies, but let's talk about COVID-19 response. I agree with his responses on COVID-19. He
Mm-hmm.
closed the schools 2 days ago. He closed the schools in Ohio for the rest of the year. Why go back with a month left? Why jeopardize people for a month's worth of in school days? I mean, you're doing school from home. There's 1 month left. He's making a wise decision. I'd rather be safe than sorry, right? He's decided that all non-essential businesses, and that was a decision a long time ago, kind of in line with. I think he was ahead of Pennsylvania by a day or two on that.
I want to agree with you. Yeah.
So look, I mean, this isn't necessarily a political thing. This is a science-based thing. This is let's make good decisions for the citizens of our state thing. And both Pennsylvania and Ohio have been pretty much in line with that. Kentucky's been pretty much in line with that because I think, they've been right there, but they've had a lot of noise from their 10 or 12% yahoos that want to go down there and yell at their governor. Maryland, I haven't seen. Did you see any protests in Maryland?
I have not. No, not at all.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there wasn't. It didn't gain it. It didn't. There was no one paid any attention to it if there was.
Right. And Maryland's governor has been a very, he's been very strict with the coronavirus response as well. He's a Republican. We've talked about him before on here, and he's actually challenged Trump a few times. And Trump was kind of after him a couple days ago because I guess Larry Hogan was able to negotiate with South Korea to buy about 500,000 PPE products, personal protective equipment products, at a really good price. And he spent 22 days negotiating with South Korea to get that done. And I guess that Trump didn't like that because that upstaged him. And what are you going to do?
The part that got me about that whole thing is whenever Trump said he was, and I'm paraphrasing, he said he was stupid because he could have got a better deal from us, which number one bothered the shit out of me. But number two said all he had to do was call Mike Pence. And I lost my shit. And I said, wait a minute. There is no reason in hell for a state to have to go asking anybody, let alone the federal government, for supplies, for testing kits, for any of these things. It's the federal government that should be going to the states and asking them what do they need.
Right.
It shouldn't be the other way around. This is ridiculous that he could even make a comment like that.
Yeah. It sure is. And when it got out that was damage control, right? That was Trump and White House damage control, because it's embarrassing. It's egg on the face to see that a state had to go to a foreign government to get what they needed, and that they got a good deal doing it, because they used savvy and used negotiation techniques that were successful. But you're absolutely right. It shouldn't even come to that. It should never come to that. But they were told, you got to fend for yourselves. And that's embarrassing for the White House.
Let me let me show you something else that is, if it isn't embarrassing yet, man, it better be pretty soon. Oh, and by the way, over the next few things that we talk about, you're going to be seeing the same last name quite a bit. Um, According to Cuomo, Governor Cuomo, Michael Bloomberg, you might remember that name, is somebody who ran for the Democratic nomination against Trump. Is going to cough up 10 million for a coronavirus tracking program. Uh, I literally just saw this right now. It's and I'm not real sure what this tracking program is going to be. If it's what I think it is, it's a waste of $10 million. But it at least they have people who are stepping up and doing something, right? And so here we go again with somebody. And there's two things I wanted to talk to you about with that. First of all, what do you think about Bloomberg stepping up and doing this? We'll start with that one. What do you think about Bloomberg stepping up and doing this?
I mean, first of all, I think anybody that has the means to do something like this, and hopefully it's going to be that it'll bear fruit, so to speak, that it'll do something positive for the cause. I haven't been able to look into it in any kind of detail, so my first reaction is good on him for using his money to try to do something good. My second reaction is knowing that anybody with a lot of money that gets involved in a cause like this becomes an immediate target. And if you see what Bill Gates, put some money into the WHO and pledged some of his money and talked about trying to come up with an immunization. A lot of people jumped on that and said he's probably the cause of this. He was probably behind COVID-19's release, and he wants to chip everybody with an immunization. Look, I don't know. I really don't know if that's the case. It sounds kind of wild and out there, but I mean, if somebody ever was able to connect the dots and prove that, I mean, okay. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it just shows me that anybody that steps up to the table to do something becomes a target. So I think he'll be a target, especially since he was an opponent of Trump. My first reaction is good. I hope it works out. I hope it's something that can help people.
Yeah, I think he's going to get a lot of death threats. I mean, Fauci was getting them, for God's sake, and he wasn't even running against Trump, right? So now, do those things bother Bloomberg? Honestly, if I were him, I wouldn't bother me a bit. But I have no doubt that they're coming, right? If they haven't already, they're going to, because I wanted to see how old this article is. I'm telling you, Frank, it's an hour old. Okay, this Daily News put this up an hour ago, right? New York Daily News put this up an hour ago. So this is brand new. Hopefully this isn't the tracking system that they've been talking about over the last couple of days. I don't know if you're aware of how this system is working, or if you heard anything about it. Basically, it's a low level Bluetooth ping that happens from one cell phone to another. Okay, it's very similar to NFC. Okay, very similar to it. It's not it exactly, but it's very similar to it. So in theory, what happens is, let's say you and I are walking down the street. We're walking opposite directions. Okay, you're walking past me. I'm walking past you. Whenever we get within so many feet of each other, one of our cell phones will ding or well, they'll make a connection. They'll ping each other, and one of us will be notified if the other person has been in contact with somebody that tested positive. Okay, because it's just geolocating your cell phone right through the cell towers. So the connection is cell phone to cell phone. So the problem that we have with this is, at best we have the old Kevin Bacon 7 degrees of separation, right? Everybody within the sound of my voice, within seeing us, knows this game, has played this game, has seen it happen. Okay, so if I I'm somebody who has been around or exposed to somebody else who tested positive, and you walk past me and you're notified. That's fantastic. If you never get in contact with anybody else ever again, because eventually, through a series of contacts and a very small number, 7 degrees, you're going to come back around to me,
Mm-hmm.
which means you're going to see it twice now. Okay. Even though I may have been the only person that's been in contact with people, I'll know somebody, they ping me. So now they know somebody that's been in contact, right? So now you know somebody, me, and somebody else knows somebody, me. Well, let's make this very simplistic and say you two now walk past each other. You guys are both going to ding again. So now your phone is going to show that you've been around 2 people, when in reality, it's only been me.
Right.
Now expand that over 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 people.
Yeah.
The math simply doesn't work.
Right. It'll be overwhelmed within a short period of time, and everybody will be supposedly exposed. Um, so what are they going to do with the information? And that's the thing. Information is helpful to an extent, but if you can't really refine the information in a way that's meaningful, it's not helpful.
Where you now have an exponential number of false positives.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't do anybody any good.
No. So what
So
I just said. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
so I hope that what this 10 million that he's funding is for something else. It's not this. It's something else that they're doing.
I can see why you feel that way, and I would too, based upon what you just told me. I hope it goes to something much more productive than that. Or if it does go to that it's some way, in somehow they could find a way to refine it better than that. And I don't know that they can, based upon what you said. So hopefully it'll go to something better than that. I sent you something just recently via email. I don't know if you're able to pull that email up, but it's a note about what we started talking about when we were talking about current events. You brought up this topic of about 10 to 12%. 12% of the people think we've gone too far with our restrictions. It's not very helpful to the governors when that 12% is being amplified by the Attorney General of the United States. Bill Barr has apparently said, and if you end up pulling this up, go ahead and share it on the screen, that he would compare the shutdown, quote unquote shutdown, to house arrest, and that they'll be looking at ways to, in his words, we're looking carefully at a number of these rules that are being put in place. And if we think there are ones that go too far, initially, we're going to try to jawbone, that's his quote, jawbone the governors into rolling them back or adjusting them. And if they're not, and people bring lawsuits, we file statement of interest and side with the plaintiffs. So if some half-baked lawsuit is filed to say these restrictions have gone too far, yeah, there it is. Thank you for sharing that. Apparently, the full weight of the United States Attorney General's office is going to come down on the governors. So, let's just say, I decided tomorrow that I wanted to go out and sue the state of Pennsylvania for these restrictions that we have. Really with no basis at all, just saying I personally don't think they're good restrictions. I can all of a sudden have the AG's office join in with me on that. Seems like a great idea, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. Yeah. I have a question. Who decides what's too much?
The way
Who decides this whatever the ruling is goes too far?
Right.
Where's the line in the sand that says
Right.
no, this is okay, but cross this line, that's too far. You can't do that. Where did this come from? If I'm not mistaken, Frank, and you're trust me when I tell you, I'm going into your territory now. The thing that makes a law legitimate is because it's something that everybody at one point agreed on was the law. This is incredible. I'm making it incredibly simplistic, but I mean, there's very few people in the world that will tell you, that will argue what murder is.
Right.
Right. Murder's murder. I mean, you get situational and whatever, but the general idea of murder is pretty much a universal truth. Um, how do you determine who gets to decide how much is too much?
Well, that's a great question because, we've talked a little bit about, where do we go from here after this kind of gets under control and we have a new normal. Um, does that change how we interact with each other? Do we stop shaking hands? I mean, these are silly little questions, but the point is, if somebody said it's now a law in Pennsylvania that you can't greet somebody with a handshake until we change the law.
Mhm.
I don't know that there's any other law out there or higher authority that says that's too restrictive. It seems silly and it seems like it would be very arbitrary and maybe it could be challenged on that basis. But if you said, well, public health is at stake, we're doing this for the safety of our citizens, there's an argument to be made. Um, you know, it goes to the heart of your question. Those rules and those kind of guidelines are, you know, they're very arbitrary in a sense. Um, I'm going to take it to just a slightly different direction in the same topic that we're talking about. It goes to me to say, like, it's whatever's good for the goose is good for the gander, and whatever this person wants at this day, at this moment. And I'm speaking of Bart. He wants to make a political issue of the restrictions and call them too restrictive. Yet, whenever coronavirus became a thing, he asked Congress to extend emergency powers to hold people in jail indefinitely without a trial. And people don't remember that it wasn't very widely publicized and the idea kind of got shot down quickly. But that was our attorney general in the United States that asked for the ability to hold people for trial indefinitely without the trial taking place. Because we have rules in this country that say when you're jailed pending trial, the trial has to happen within so many days. Habeas corpus, et cetera. You have to be able to try that person within a reasonable time frame and not hold them in jail indefinitely, saying, well, we're going to try them for their crimes and we'll prove why they should stay in jail. We'll get to that later. Because the problem is you could spend conceivably years in jail if you didn't have a rule that says you have to have that trial within 180 days and then be found not guilty, but you've spent all that time in jail. How do you ever get it back? So he's saying, well, we have this coronavirus issue. We might close courts. So we should be able to extend this indefinitely. And that's a crazy notion. But when it's good for him, let's suggest it. But when it's good for, it's good for people's health, but not good for business, let's go the other way and say, oh, that's too restrictive. We're going to call it house arrest.
Wow. He's a piece of garbage. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. He's a piece of garbage. He's a political hack. He is you know what he is, Frank? He's a fixer.
He is.
That's exactly what he is. He's a fixer. If our president was what was a mob head, this guy would be his fixer.
He sure would. That's exactly a great analysis of what he is, because he looks at all the loopholes that are in our system. Because let's face it, we don't want to write laws for every single scenario. That's too restrictive. That is too restrictive. We don't want to run out and write a new law for every little scenario that comes up. We leave that to the interpretation of the courts. We leave that to the interpretation of 12 jurors or 8 jurors or whatever your jurisdiction says should be sitting on the jury panel. And we argue the reasonable man or woman standard when we sit in front of a jury and stand in front of them and say, what would the hypothetical reasonable person do in this scenario based upon the facts that were in front of them, the issues that were in front of them? And that's how we apply common sense to the law. The problem is, in our society, we've used that common sense and norms to guide how we govern ourselves. That is not what he's doing. He's telling the president there aren't laws to cover all these things. So I'm going to show you how to wiggle through all these loopholes, and you challenge everything because they'll never be able to stick everything on you. You'll just overwhelm them with all the bullshit you'll throw at them. And that's what he is. He's a fixer. Exactly what you said. He's gotten to the point where he said, look, he's taken a run at this before with Bush and other presidents. He's run through this process before. Now he's got the perfect foil. He's got the country that is up in arms over foreign interference, which, by the way, was proven by the Senate, Republican-controlled Senate. It was proven that Russia did interfere in our 2016 election, but that's flying under the radar now. But he's got this foil that he's been talking about, the boogeyman, that the Steele report was false, and he keeps everybody's attention on all these other bullshit items. And meanwhile, he tells the president how to basically break all of our laws and norms in a way that he won't be caught for.
Yeah, and there's the sad part about it all, Frank, is the one thing that people should theoretically have some take some comfort in is that there's always, if there's an injustice, there's always a mechanism to correct that injustice. Okay, now again, I understand I'm not being naive. I said theoretically,
right?
Or for certain individuals there is none whenever it's the AG. What recourse do people have? Yeah, you could try to impeach him, but don't forget that impeachment eventually makes its way to the Senate, who is in charge of confirming him.
Right.
So what are the chances of that happening? Right.
We've seen it. We've seen it already. We've seen that play out. So yeah, we're left with this. Hopefully he will be kept in check to some extent until November, and we can have a fair election and we get rid of this guy once and for all, because to me, he's scarier than Trump, because he's a guy that knows the law. He knows the Constitution, and all he's doing is actively working to undermine all of that.
Yeah, and it just kills me that there's really no recourse. That I mean, there is. You just vote him out. You just vote his boss out, and he's going to go away.
And hopefully, the states that he's been barred in will disbar him as well.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Just as a let's say, everything eventually gets back to the way things are supposed to be, and Biden becomes our next president in November. Okay, he wins the vote. He gets sworn in January, and he's now our new president. I'm assuming Barr will still have a job then, right? Because the appointees don't lose their job whenever the president is no longer president, whether he's voted out or he serves out his term. So everybody underneath them still have their job until they're replaced. I'm assuming that's how it works, right? I mean, that's how local government works.
Right.
At what point can and I again just pacify me, does he have to be removed from office before he can be prosecuted? Barr I'm talking about.
No, because the only person under that AG memo or the DOJ memo that is not to be prosecuted while in office is the president. And remember, that's not law. We've talked about that on this show too. That's just a memo. The DOJ memo only applies to the president. It doesn't apply to the AG. So he could be prosecuted while he's in office. Barr. Yeah.
So basically the DOJ would be prosecuting their boss.
Right. Or if there was a state court that for some reason found a state level offense that he committed, then, a state authority could prosecute him. But yeah, that would be interesting that if it was a federal offense, that the agency would be prosecuting their boss.
That would be something to see. Boy, would that be something to see. Cool. Did you happen to watch Maddow a couple nights back whenever she was talking about that Tyson chicken plant? I would say it was in Smithville. She actually had the sheriff of this town on, and this plant is kind of like typhoid Mary, right? Everybody who works there is infected, and Tyson refused to shut the place down.
Mm.
You know, this is why I love Otto. That's why I think she's absolutely brilliant. Well, look at what came over the news today.
Wow.
Uh-huh. So there you go. Don't ever say that you know, the light doesn't that doesn't make a difference.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
There is absolutely no doubt that when you shine a light on folks and embarrass them, it does change behaviors. It does still change behavior.
it truly does. Whenever you have folks who are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, they need to be exposed. And whenever you have folks who are doing things that they should be doing, they need to be praised. They need to be they need to be acknowledged for what they're doing. And that's not a partisan thing, right? Everybody can talk about who's doing what they should do. We both talked about the governor of Ohio, right? Both neither of us are close to a Republican anything, and we've both said today and I don't know how many times what a good job he's doing, right? So it's not a partisan or a political thing, and it shouldn't be. Whenever somebody's doing something that deserves to be recognized, they should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
To finish this whole thing off, remember I said we're going to be talking about we were going to be talking about a certain family here for a little bit. This is you know, here you go. Remember, you know, Chris Cuomo on CNN who came down with the virus. Now his son has it. I want to say his yep. So it's him. He's just getting over it. His wife has it, and now his son has it. So if we're following this out, remember how we used to say that we used to say the flu is a 1-to-1, right?
Yeah.
If you're infected, you'll infect somebody else. Where the COVID-19 is a 3-to-1.
Right.
Well, this is a 2-to-1.
Yeah.
Right? Because the host Chris Cuomo had it. His wife Christina came down with it, and now his son Mario came down with it. So there's only one more in the house, right? That's his daughter, as far as I know. So this thing's spreading exactly how we how it's supposed to. And
yeah, I mean, statistics, when they're well done, you could pretty much count on it, right? Because that's an indication of what science has seen, what they've measured. And hey, you know, you can go out and say, I like how you tweeted these a couple times, Patsy. You know, the statistics and the scientists are telling me that this is going to spread 3-to-1. But the guy that I graduated high school with that you know, works down at the Sunoco station, he told me it's all a government hoax. So what should I believe?
yeah, who should I believe, right? Yeah, I love that. But my buddy who got all C's, straight C's in high school, is telling me that it's an Illuminati plot, right?
Yeah.
So I'm torn. I don't know who to believe.
Right.
But that whole thing goes back to the same old bullshit that all of a sudden your opinion has as much weight as facts do.
Yeah.
You know, that's and you can thank Fox Entertainment for that, because they poisoned this well a long time ago.
They sure did. Well, Patsy, thank you for doing this again. Glad we could do our Wednesday pod in this new format, and glad for all the followers that are listening.
Yeah.
And can't wait to see you guys again tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll convert this to an audio file, to an MP3, and we'll get it up on all of our normal podcast outlets. So, you know, Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google, Podbean. Am I missing? Yeah, I'm missing a few. If there's anything you subscribe podcast to, we're there. It's just that we're everywhere. You know, we like to say. So until that, oh, folks, one thing before we cut it out, if you like what you see and you like what you hear, please support us on Patreon. You can do so for as little as $1 a month, and the higher up you go, the better your perks are. You can be with us, and I forgot what tier it was. I think it's one of the more middle tiers that you could be on our audio podcast with us. Or we'll actually make an audio podcast with you. And in one of the more upper tiers, you'll be on Twitch and Mixer and Periscope and everything else with us once a month.
We'd love to have you.
We pick somebody new once a month. So with that being said, we want to thank everybody. Like we always say, your time is very valuable. And the fact that you're willing to spend some of that time with us means a great deal to us, folks. You have no idea how much it means to us. You have no idea how excited we get whenever we see the numbers, whenever this thing's over. But until then, till our normal time on our normal show tomorrow, until then, like we always say, well, geez, what do I say, Frank? I forgot it. Oh, I can't even say same bad time, same bad channel, because we're at a different time tomorrow. But
same bad time, same bad channel.
Yeah. Tomorrow I can say that.
Yeah.
So we'll say it tomorrow. But until then, everybody take care. Give all of your loved ones a big hug and a kiss, because God knows they need it, and believe it or not, so do you. Until then, goodbye, good luck, and God bless. We'll see you guys then.